Welcome back to Viewmasters, Rusty. Our movie today, Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yes, I picked this one. And do you know why I picked this one?
Why did you pick it?
Because I couldn't justify our friendship any longer. That it's been 35 years since this film came out and you haven't seen it.
It's true. This was my first time seeing Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and I have now seen it like 10 times.
Well, I guess you like it.
I don't know. It's kind of a weird guy. No, I loved it.
But you know what? This movie, growing up, everybody was into this movie. Like, this is a movie that my brother and my cousins, we all rented together to watch it because we all loved it. So it really brought the group together.
Now, I'm friends with your brother. I have trouble imagining Mark Stark being into this movie.
Well, it had BMX guys in it, so he was into that.
Oh yeah. So after the first 20 minutes, he's like, "I'm checking out. I'm done."
He came back in towards the end. No, but I feel like this appeals to everyone. I don't know anybody that hates this movie.
He's a weird guy. I don't care for him. I don't like him. He's strange.
Is that Trump's take on this?
The president was really clear that he does like the film. He likes it. Like everybody else. He likes it. That's the press secretary.
I'm glad you clarified.
This also is a very quarantine-y movie.
Mm-hmm.
We're recording this. Well, I mean, I have to get into the opening scene then. But in the very opening scene, when it's Pee-wee waking up, and he's just kind of like crazy and has all this manic energy, and the great Danny Elfman score is pumping, and he's like putting tape all around his head, and he's like, ha, 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 and he's just like a madman. That's like the kind of stuff that you end up doing in quarantine. But here's the even bigger thing that I don't know if anyone's talked about, but did you see when he pulls the horoscope thing down? The date range is like late February to March 20th. And then the message says, "Don't go outside today." Now, I always remember March 13th was the day that I went inside for the rest of my life. That's like when things started locking down.
They told you could come out now, but you haven't.
Well, well, here's another weird thing is I went to the drive-in last night, and the drive-in plays a huge role in this film.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that drive-ins are coming back now.
Yeah.
VHS is coming back for some reason. Records have been back, and now drive-ins. This is my dream come true.
I love the drive-in. Spending that whole time worrying if my brake lights are on.
You had your foot on the brake the whole time.
I was just paranoid. I was like, are all the lights of my car off? Because there's like a car like right behind me. I was like, I don't want to annoy anyone. Are they all off?
I don't understand. How come you couldn't figure out how to turn the brake lights off?
Because they're like hieroglyphics. They're I don't know what these symbols are. It was just like, it's like a circle with like a line, and then it's like a circle with no line, but it's like, it's so complicated.
The question I need to know though is, you're a type of person that needs to go to the bathroom a lot to pee. Mm-hmm. How did you do this at the drive-in? Did you go into their restrooms, or did you just go into a cup?
No, I went into their restrooms, and you had to wear a mask if you got out of your car. I went with Justin, and we saw Fury Road, and another connection, because Fury Road, people mad about vehicles. Pee-wee is mad about a vehicle. But when Justin went to the we both went to the bathroom like a million times, and we also ate like the worst food, including funnel cakes. And it looked like there had been like a Coke party in my car by the time we were done with it. But at one point, Justin went to the bathroom, and on his way back, he tried to get into the wrong car. He scared the shit out of these people.
Now, just to backtrack, you mentioned the Danny Elfman score. Mm-hmm. Quite an iconic score. Everybody knows this. Are you a fan of Danny Elfman's other work?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, he's done so much. I feel like nowadays, it's kind of like, all right, I get it. It's the same thing over and over again.
I mean, I honestly haven't seen much of his recent work, unless there's things I'm forgetting. But I love this score. And I'll tell you, when I first heard it, I said, geez, Nino Rota much? Like, it sounds just like a Fellini score. I know that's a highbrow reference you're not getting, but
I know he's done Fellini. I know the name.
But then I looked it up, and I read that Danny Elfman, he didn't know how to do a score, because this was his very first score. Tim Burton went to a Oingo Boingo show and got the idea, And so Danny Elfman studied Nino Rota and kind of based his score on those scores. And man, there can't be a better score. Like imagine this movie with like a Tangerine Dream score, who I love, but it just wouldn't work.
Yeah, definitely wouldn't work. The score is a nice. What am I trying to say here?
I don't know, but I'm really enjoying it.
I lost my train of thought. It's very complimentary to the movie, is what I guess I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a scene where Pee Wee is knocking on the door, and he's knocking in like the pattern of the score. Yeah. And usually the score is like way after the film is shot. So I was like, I guess it's pretty interesting.
Did you know though that what's his name? Why am I drawing a blank now? Oh my god,
Rusty's going hard out of the gate. I love it.
I want to see you deal with a 3-month-old. It's very difficult.
I got 5 of them right now.
What did he? He's picking them up.
I'm robbing the nursery again. I'm back to my old habits. What I'm talking about here. I don't know. This film, of course, Paul Reubens was a member of the Groundlings. Has spawned so many people. I remember going to the Groundlings in my early LA days. I always saw Melissa McCarthy, and I was like, man, how sad for this very funny lady that she's not famous. Well, now she is, so it all worked out.
When did the Groundlings start? Do you know? Is it the 70s?
The year was 50,000 BC. It was incredible. Grog would club a guy, and audiences would lose their shit.
I had no idea. Wow, very informative.
We're looking for an element, fire. No, but really, we're really looking for it.
What about what's their take on the wheel? What do they got for that?
Oh my god, I don't know. I didn't really think out this bit too much.
So the Groundlings would have had that covered. They would have material for that. Shame on you.
That's true. Yeah, exactly. That's why I need that training.
Is that why you couldn't make it into the Groundlings?
You want to hear something spooky?
Go, yeah. Of course, I want to hear something spooky.
Phil Hartman, one of the writers on this, and we all know that Phil Hartman reached a tragic end. And there's a documentary on Hulu, The Last Days of Phil Hartman. Now, for whatever reason, whenever I try to watch this on PS4, if you put it on, the sound is just like, it doesn't play right. It's just like weird sounds, like it's like a broken link. And it's very eerie.
That is eerie. You need to investigate this. You got to summon Bloody Mary again. Get her on the case.
They might have fixed it. Actually, speaking of the weird characters in my life, so my what do you call it? My fuse box has been buzzing just a little too much. Like whenever the AC kicks on, it's normal to have a little buzz, but now it's like buzzing a lot. So I looked up. I was like, "Who's the preferred electrician for my building?" I looked it up. His name is Eddie. So I thought, this is a sign. I got to call him. So I call this guy, leave him like a long message. And he calls me back and he's like explaining the whole situation. And he's like, I got to come and fix the fuse then. And he's like, and what's your name? And I was like, my name is also Eddie. And he goes, oh my God, you must be a really good looking guy. And then he's like, I need your address. And I start to give him my address, and he's like, oh no, Eddie, I'm in the attic. I can't take it now. Why do I ask? I'm an idiot. And I was like, wow, this is another classic character coming into my life.
Oh, you got to hire this guy. You got to get him over there.
He said he was going to call me back in like 2 hours. He hasn't called me back. So instead, I bought a fire extinguisher. So I'm just like, I'm ready for this to burst into flames.
I love that you called him because his name was Eddie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but just one thing with Phil Hartman. I remember the day he died. It's very tragic.
I remember. I remember listener Mike. I remember telling him we were playing basketball. And I told him, and he was like, no, that's a joke. And I was like, it's not a joke. He's gone.
Do you know when Phil Hartman died? That one of the big games at that time was Ocarina of Time.
Really?
Takes you back. Yeah, look how long ago that was.
So you're saying if only we played the right tune, we could have gone back and saved it.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm saying.
God damn it, I'm going to get on my polygonal horse. And
Did you know though that in Paul Rubens' original script for this, it was a retelling of the movie Pollyanna, except Pee Wee was the Pollyanna character.
I did know that. And then
You did?
working at the studio, he saw all these bikes and
Mm.
he thought, I got to get a bike. And that inspired that. And also, they didn't know how to write a script. So they got Sid Field's book script or whatever it's called and did the exact formula that was in the book.
I didn't know that part. Where does Bicycle Thieves come into play? Because they say it's loosely based or inspired by that film.
Well, a bike is stolen in both films. I think that's the connection.
Are you a huge Tim Burton fan? Like, at what point do you stop liking Tim Burton?
Well, my favorite Tim Burton film is his remake of Planet of the Apes. And no, I've never been that big of a Tim Burton fan. I'm actually a bigger fan now, probably than I ever was in my youth.
Oh, really?
And, yeah. And it was also kind of, when we were growing up, it was like Tim Burton was like pretty basic to be into. So like you wanted to be not into that. You know what I mean?
What years are you talking about? Because I'm thinking like Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands, which is I think before.
Oh yeah, well those of course are the best movies, but I mean like in your young cinephile years, like and people are also into movie. That's like when you're like into punk, and like there's the kids who are like really into like Soundgarden, like they're just not as cool,
That's why Chris Cornell killed himself.
He did. He was like, I played my Ocarina of Time. I've foreseen that this guy's going to reference me on this podcast, and later.
I don't know if that's a too soon one, but we'll see.
I have no sense of time anymore. So if you're like, oh, Chris Cornell actually died 20 years ago, I'd be like, oh yeah, I remember that. You're like, he died 2 months ago. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, actually, if I had to guess, I would say maybe 3 years ago now. Not sure.
Yeah, that sounds right.
It sounds right. So anyway, so this movie starts off with a Tour de France dream.
It sucks when you have those triumphant dreams and then you wake up and you're like, oh man.
Do you have one? Do you have a go-to or just in general?
I had a dream the other night that I was playing Mario Kart with a cute girl, and I woke up and I was like, oh no, still in quarantine, still alone.
Hey, you're gonna be in quarantine for a while.
Yeah, I know.
This is why you need a ghouly sidekick. I mean, that would solve all your problems.
That is true.
I'm sure it would give you a hand job every once in a while.
I don't feel great about it, but we're lonely. Technically, he's like 700 years old. Even though he looks like a baby, he is much older than I am.
Man, your dick would look huge in his hand, though.
Come on. This is getting a little too dirty.
It is. All right. Tearing up over here. What's the one? I have a lot of dreams where my teeth are loose. What does that mean?
Oh, yeah. That means you're a liar.
Well, that's true. You ever have a dream, though, where you died in your dream?
No, because then you would die in real life. That's been documented.
Oh. That's documented.
I remember being terrified of that as a kid.
I know. Well, that's probably because of Nightmare on Elm Street.
But it was also like a weird belief. Like I remember there was like a riddle that in school, like it was like like you'd have those stories that you would read, and it would be like a kind of like a riddle. And the catch of this, it was like, and why is the guy lying? And like the lie was because like, oh, you can't die in your dream because then you'll die in real life. And I was like, is that real?
There were so many of those things from elementary school that we believed. Those weird urban legend things.
Rusty, you're aware that you cannot fall asleep on the air, right?
What time is it now? I think it's way past my bedtime. I'm dying over here. You know, can I just tell you?
Yeah.
Can I just say about having a newborn, a 3-month-old? Nobody prepares you for it. It is exhausting. I don't know how people do it. All my life, I thought like, oh, having kids is so easy. This is the payback.
Yeah, I don't know. When I finally experience it when I'm 56, I'm really going to be in a world of hurt.
My back hurts rocking her to sleep, spending like a half hour rocking her. At 56, your knees will be shot. You're going to be in a wheelchair rocking your kid to sleep. I really don't know how people do it. But yeah, so Pee-wee wakes up from this dream.
Oh yeah.
And we're introduced to this character for the first time.
I love his excitement, how crazy he is here. It's the best.
Yeah. He's a man-child. We see that he lives Basically, he's single, just surrounded by his very kitschy objects, and just lives an awesome life. Just no worries.
I feel so much like Pee Wee. Like in this opening scene, this feels like my life.
I wish it was my life, so I'm kind of envious of both of you now. How much of that is your day? Like when you wake up in the morning, like what do you have a routine?
Well, have you ever seen the film Sallow, 120 Days of Sodom?
I have seen that. Which part of that movie is your routine?
I don't know. I've never seen it, actually. I've always been too afraid of it.
It's really weird because I was expecting worse, and then watching it, I was just like, all right, it's not too bad. So they had to eat some shit. There you go.
That's what everyone says about that.
Yeah.
So Pee Wee Herman, though, I always was a little troubled by him because we had our mutual friend Eric. He's been mentioned on this show many times, and he loved Pee Wee Herman. This kid fucking loved Pee Wee Herman. But do you remember he used to always do the dance, like the dance from the bar scene later in the film? And like he'd put on the music and he would like shimmy around, and his mom would just be like, oh, and like clapping, and like her enthusiasm. It was just kind of weird. It's like it was like Midsummer-esque, something about it. And it always kind of disturbed me.
Is that why you avoided Pee Wee?
Well, then I saw Big Top Pee Wee.
Wait, that was his birthday party one year. Did you go to that?
I was there.
Okay, we were there together, just probably not sitting next to each other.
Yeah, I don't remember getting an inappropriate hand job. What the fuck? But I'll tell you, then I saw Pee Wee. I saw Pee Wee's Playhouse live with a friend of mine.
Oh,
like back in like 2009 or whatever that was, whenever that tour was.
Oh, yeah. I think it was also HBO special, right? They did another special.
I think so, yeah. But this was like the first.
Are you seeing
this was the first. I remember, she was such a pothead. Like the weed overwhelmed me completely. And on the drive to Pee Wee, I thought I was going to die. Like I thought I was having a heart attack, and I was just rocking back and forth. And I saw like a hospital on the side of the freeway, and I was like, just tell her to drop you at the hospital. Just tell her to drop you at the hospital. And I was like, no, stick with it. So then over the course of Pee Wee, I like recovered. But it was funny because later she was like, did you have a good time? And I was like, yeah. I was like, but actually, to tell you the truth, on the way there, I was having like a bad reaction to the weed. And she's like, well, yeah, you were rocking back and forth incessantly. But the funny thing about this Pee Wee's Playhouse show was that after Paul Rubens did a Q&A as himself, not as Pee Wee, which was like one of the most amazing Q&As I've ever seen. It was so raw, and it was so like he would talk about anything. Like he was talking about Phil Hartman's death, like the night he died, like the things he went through. It was such an interesting Q&A. But then the people who were asking questions were asking the dumbest questions, or they were just like, can you sign my cherry doll? And it was just, I hate when there's a disconnect between like what the Q&A person is giving and then what the audience is bringing to it. But this one girl stood up, and she was like so palpably nervous. And she just goes, what was it? Was it your right or your left? And then like sat down, and he was like, he's like, he got mad. But I was like, why would you do that? And she was also holding like a Pee Wee doll. So she obviously liked him. But what the fuck? Back then, when when Paul Rubens went to the adult theater, what are you supposed to do in an adult theater?
Yeah, doesn't he maintain though that he actually wasn't doing it?
Well, I think he should have been.
Yeah. I think it was only because he was like a beloved like child star. Not a child star, but a child entertainer. I don't know. Like, I remember at the time when that came out, and it was like in like Newsweek and Time and stuff, and like looking at it and thinking like that's not that big of a deal.
No, it really
isn't. Who cares?
I mean, if you go into an adult film and sit down in the theater back then, and you just stare at the screen like impassively and do nothing, that is fucking serial killer behavior. That is much more troubling than jerking off, which is normal.
They probably they were probably tipped off that it was like a celebrity there. It was like a good way to make a headline.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. The guy who like ran like the ticket counters at Crooked, and he's like in with like the Vice Squad, and he's like, oh, I got a scoop for you today.
Well, anyway, so Pee Wee Herman, he has a Rube Goldberg.
He loves Rube Goldberg inventions. Very, never been good at these Rube Goldberg inventions. I think I've told this story before, right? My Rube Goldberg invention.
I can listen to you tell your Rube Goldberg inventions all day long.
for whatever reason, we were obsessed with the Karate Kid in 10th grade. It was like a rediscovery of the film. And we thought it was so funny. Like the scene where he's like, this stupid bike. Like we thought that was the height of comedy. And so we got the teacher to show it in chemistry class if we joined the science Olympiads. And first of all, when we showed the movie, it was a complete disaster because there was this one girl, Denise, who was like in the grade above us. This is like the advanced class. She was like in the grade above us, but then ended up in our class, which happened to me at some point, I think. But she was like, "Why are we watching this? This is stupid. Why are we doing that?" And like she would not shut up. And so basically just ruined watching Karate Kid in chemistry. But then we were locked into doing the science Olympiads. And I remember it was like you had to make a Rube Goldberg invention. I remember going to our friend Dan's house, and all I had was a 2x4 and a boot. And I was like, we could do something with this.
That's just Mousetrap.
And he was like, I guess we had to come up with like a plan first. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, I put the boot on the piece of wood. I was like, this? Like, that's just not one of my skills. And I eventually was removed from the team.
I'm sure as a kid, though, you were very, I wouldn't say obsessed, but you were very fascinated by Rube Goldberg machines, right? Like
completely.
Like a good one. Yeah.
I mean, I always wanted that game Mousetrap, but everyone told me it was bad. Like even my parents somehow knew that it was bad. So I'd always be like, I really want Mousetrap. My mother's like, it doesn't work. Like everyone hated that game.
I think everybody liked to set it up just to like set off the traps, but I don't think nobody knew how to play that game. I think it was one of those games that nobody ever bothered to read the instructions. They just wanted to run the course. But yeah, that game.
Sorry, but if I don't finish the Science Olympiad story, I know we're going to get a comment from Dan. So when we finally revealed to our teacher that we had like no kind of Rube Goldberg thing, we couldn't figure it out. She was like, well, there is an option where you could just take a science test and then you're part of the competition then. But I was so bad at science that she was like, how do we get Ed out of this? And she's like, I've got a good idea. She's like, Ed, how about you be a spy and you go look at other people's things and like then you report back to us what the other teams have done for their inventions. And I was like, I know what this is. So while they took the test, I looked at everyone else's. I mean, everyone else's things were so impressive, just like every other science fair I've ever been to in my life. Like just like the baseball card show I went to that time, where at my dad's school, I thought I was gonna get rich with like I had like 50 comics I was gonna sell. I think I've told the story before, and like all these kids had fucking real stores going. And I've always been outclassed in things like that. Oh, I never told that. Like,
no,
I like my dad's school. He was a principal of Syosset, which is like a rich school. It had a comic book and baseball card show, and I got a table, and I brought my horrible baseball cards and my horrible comics to sell. And I literally thought I was going to sell all of them and be rich. And I sold none of them, except I got suckered into some deal where I gave like Roger Clemens' rookie for like Greg Jeffries' rookie, because that was like the only card that was selling. So I was like, we got to, I was like, we got to chase it. We got to find that because like people were asking for that. And then there was like a bully big kid who came over and like read the comics at our table. He was like, yo, you mind if I read this comic? And I was like, sure. So he sat next to us just like reading our wares. But then like the rest of the kids had like professional setups. They had like those electric LED signs that were like, you know, oh, now available, blah, blah, blah. And like just like walls and like, oh God.
Those rich kids. Yeah, but you know they didn't really do that work. You know they probably hired a contractor to come in and set everything up. They had Eddie and your plumber there setting everything up.
Ed, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to betray you like this, but they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. You know, they got me dinner. They got me dinner and a copy of the comic X Factor, Ed. Have you heard of this, Ed? It's like X-Men, but it's a longer word, Factor. X Factor 63. I'm very excited to read it. Oh, look at this. Beast. He's blue. That's who ever heard of a blue beast?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, where's Eddie on this? What's Eddie doing?
Oh God! I didn't know they made a beast blue. Why did they do it? I like it, Eddie. I like it.
Your stand must have been so sad looking.
It really was.
Ray was probably like, Eddie, I can't. Well, you could do the, but he couldn't even fix it. He's like, Eddie, I can't do anything for you.
Just imagine like a fold-out table with like 40 comics in a very sloppy order and very aspirational pricing. That as the day went on, I kept like Xing out and then like taking down lower.
People were watching you and just like, I'll just wait. This guy's clearly going to be giving them away for free by the end of the day.
Oh God.
Did you like his Rube Goldberg contraption?
I love everything. I love everything about this film.
Yeah, I mean, my one caveat with that is that, all right, just with Rube Goldberg in general, especially if they're making you breakfast, that would be such a pain in the ass to set up that and to clean up.
Oh yeah. Like, it's definitely not efficient.
Like, that's what you have to do before you go to bed at night, get everything prepped. Plus, there's pancake batter already like pre-made in the thing. Like, how did that happen? I know. Yeah, we have to suspend our disbelief, but
it does go on for so long that you are kind of like, oh man, what the hell? What if this guy really did this? What would his life be like?
You know what's funny though? To this day, even as a kid in 1980, probably 86 when I first saw it, the orange that's being squeezed, this looks like such a Nerf ball. I was just like, this doesn't even look like an orange.
Yeah,
that always bothered me.
Now you know what we have to get to now is the Mr. T cereal.
First of all, before we jump right to Mr. T, I love his interaction with his breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
When he's just like, "Good morning, Mr. Breakfast." Like just the way he's like, "Can I have some Mr. T cereal?" And he's just like, "Okay." Like, I always thought that was hilarious. But yeah, Mr. T cereal.
Now, back in our day, everyone got cereal. You know, there would be a Viewmasters podcast cereal if we were back in the 80s. And I thought to myself, they just don't seem to make as much cereal as they used to. So I did a little research, Rusty. It turns out it's true.
Yeah.
They don't make as much cereal as they used to. And you know why?
It's advertising to kids. It's like direct advertiser, right?
That could be another reason. But the reason I read was that it's just not convenient. People think that takes too long. Our culture is so crazy that you need to have like something you could grab and then run out the door with.
Really?
That's what I read.
Is that why Count Chocula and Frankenberry only come out at Halloween now instead of being all year round?
I didn't. I remember when the ghost guy, when Boo Berry disappeared, that was like my first experience with death. I was like, oh.
I didn't want to tell you what happened to Yummy Mummy, but I feel like, well, I thought the other issue is Ralston doesn't exist anymore, does it? And they pretty much had the market on anything that was pop culture.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I just remember when I was in kindergarten, Mrs. Bobby, she was my kindergarten teacher.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And my dad was the principal of that elementary school at that time.
Oh, I forgot you went to a different school.
That's right. This is before my dad went to Syosset, and my kindergarten was in Wantagh. I went to the morning and the afternoon classes. They were really fun. And I remember at one point, Mrs. Bobby got so intense about cereal, and she was like, if there's a cartoon character on it, it's sugar. And I was like, oh, what about Fruit Loops? And she's like, if it's a cartoon. I was like, what about, whatever. She's like, it's a cartoon. And I remember like I felt that kind of like guilt eating cereal then for the rest of my life. So like I shifted away from cereal.
I still love junky cereal. I would get any cereal that came out. I think I've tried like every cereal back then.
Really? Did you ever have the Nintendo cereal?
Oh, of course. I've had the Nintendo cereal, the Dunkin' Donuts cereal, the Rocky Road cereal, ice cream cones, all that shit. Even all the licensed stuff like G.I. Joe, Rainbow Bright, Smurfs.
Full Metal Jacket.
Full Metal Jacket.
And I don't like that cereal. And I'll never eat Full Metal Jacket cereal, and I'll tell you why, Ed. Because that sniper, she shot the Lucky Charms leprechaun. He died in my arms, Ed.
That sniper took out everyone. The Tricks buddy. What?
Do you remember there was a sub who used to always talk about that? He'd be like, I had a guy. Yeah, I think his name was Doyle.
Yeah. He
would.
Wait, he got fired for, I think, slamming a kid.
Really? Because he always talked about, he's like, yeah, I tried out for the Jets. And then he talked about like, a kid died of an OD in my arms. In my freaking arms, man. Don't do drugs. Please don't do drugs.
That guy was like a kind of like a Boomer Esiason meets like
Yes. Oh my God. Wow.
and like Dauber from Coach.
Wow. Jesus. How do you have the perfect comparison of this person you haven't seen in 30 years?
Yeah, I mean, he had a temper. He took it out on some kid. Kid was wising off a little bit too much. Slammed, then fired.
Yeah, we got to move on.
Yeah.
I
But
love when. Oh, sorry.
I just want to say, with all the stuff that Pee Wee Herman had in his house, all that kitsch stuff, that was actually a lot of his own stuff, his own possessions that he
Oh,
brought.
really? That's cool.
Yeah, it's usually the other way around, but he actually brought stuff to the set.
Oh, you mean actors stealing props from the set? Is that or is the other way around?
Well,
Oh my God,
well,
we
if
have
I
a
was,
bare set because of Paul Rubens.
well, if I was somebody that was into like kitsch stuff and they had that, I would of course take everything. So I guess maybe they knew. They said, Paul, you got to bring your own stuff. We know what's going to happen.
So Pee Wee goes outside and he was like, "Good morning, Mr. Crabtree." He's like, "I'm gonna water my lawn now."
Okay, Pee Wee.
It just reminded me of when my father's company had like a computer expert. My dad was like, "Edward, we hired a computer expert," but he was like an old man who didn't know what he was doing, and he would be like, "If you want to search the internet, the first thing you do is go up to search my desktop. You type in Netscape," and we were like, "You can just go to the icon." And I was always like, "Where did this guy come from?" And then one day we were like at my aunt's house eating like lunch in the backyard, and we all got wet because like a sprinkler came over the fence. And my aunt was like, "Arnold, turn down your sprinkler." And he's like, "Okay." And I was like, "Oh, that's the computer expert?"
I remember that guy. Oh. Surely he must be dead by now.
If he's not, then he really better be quarantined because he's must be pretty old. So Pee Wee's going outside with his bike, which he reveals. I mean, all this stuff is just so fun. And when he's going out there and he sees Francis, and Francis like everyone's energy is like, he's like, "Pee Wee, it's my birthday today." And man, I love that whole exchange. Listen to reason. I'm listening.
Like, there's really not a dull scene in this movie. It's like, it really is an adventure. It's
it really
is
an
entirety of fun. But you know what bothered me about Francis? That I mean, these are questions that obviously you're not supposed to ask, but he's a rich kid. Clearly, he could just have that bike made. I'm sure that bike probably would cost back then maybe $500. He could have went to where Dottie was working. Just be like, you're familiar with Pee Wee's bike. I'll give you $1,000. Make the same exact bike for me.
Although over the course of the film, when we see all those features the bike has, it is a very special bike.
It is, but
I also love when he's like, "I love that story."
Yeah, I do like that. I'm listening to reason. But it also, I don't know if this is where it was spawned, but the insult of "I know you are, but what am I?"
Oh my God. That was like an invincibility spell back in our youth.
Francis, though, he was in my other favorite movie growing up, Teen Wolf. So, back to back monster hits. Yeah. Yeah, he was the character Chubb. I don't know what else he's in, though. Like, I feel like because he was in two of my favorite movies growing up that he was a huge actor, but I don't know. Like, these are the things, like, if I saw him on the street, I would be amazed. Yet if I saw like somebody that's obvious, like a Chris Pratt, I would care less. I was like, oh my God, it's Mark Holton from Teen Wolf and Pee Wee's Big Adventure.
It would be like a one-man Hard Day's Night, just by you and him. You're just chasing him down the streets.
He's like getting onto the train. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would be excited to see him, but I don't know what I would say. So
he strikes me as one of those guys. Lately, I've been going to like conventions randomly, as you know, just because I've got nothing else to do. I mean, before pre-pandemic. And it's always so sad that people who have like the tables and like no one is coming up to them and they're just like glowering. That would be that guy.
I went to a chocolate expo with Jen, not last year, 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And the guy from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the original one. Was that Willy Wonka?
Wilder? Yeah. Yeah. Gene Wilder.
No, wait, which one's the original one now? Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or Willy Wonka?
Willy Wonka.
Willy Wonka. Okay, I was right. And the kid that played Mike TV was there, Paris Themin. And at first, Jen and I walked past him. And I was just like, there's nobody around him. This is so sad. I'm just like, should I take a picture with him? And then we went by again. We went past him again later on, and there was actually people around him, but they were all asking him questions, but nobody was paying for his merchandise. I felt so bad for him.
I saw Eddie Furlong at a convention recently in a similar kind of situation. Even though I think people just didn't recognize him because he looks so rough now. I'm like, someone give him money before he robs me.
Oh yeah, he looks horrible. Who would you be excited to see though? Like, name a celebrity that
Armin Shimmerman, who played Quark and the principal on Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
But you did see him. He was eating what was he eating?
That's true. Yeah. But he has like a Zoom class about Shakespeare that I've signed up for twice now, but I've no showed because it was like started at 9 a.m. But this Wednesday it starts at 7 p.m. So I might finally do it.
What time are you ambitious, Eddie, where you make these decisions to do things and then flake like later on? Is it like nighttime where you're like falling asleep and it's like, oh shit, I should do this?
No, it's like when I'm about to write or I'm supposed to do something productive, and I'm like, oh, let me buy a lot of tickets for stuff. Let me.
Yeah. The only thing is, we get like Pee Wee Herman's character, or Paul Rubens' character, is like a man child. Like all his actions are like that. Like, you know, the kid that never grew up, he has the same mannerisms. But why is Francis also like that?
Well, Francis is so rich that he never grew up.
So he's like Peter Pan.
Yeah, Pee-wee is like the good. Pee-wee's like the good version of a man child, and Francis is like the bad version of the man child.
Wait, I will correct you. Pee Wee Herman is not a good version of a man child though, because he's so selfish.
Yeah, that's one thing that actually I was a little surprised by. Like, I love how he has a kind of a bad attitude, like more than I expected going to this film for the first time.
Well, he gets his comeuppance when his bike gets stolen too for being such a dick, like to Dottie and stuff. But like, even in like the Pee Wee Herman show and also in like his holiday special, like he's selfish. Like with the Christmas special, I mean, he wanted all the gifts. Like he didn't want any other kids to have gifts. And I think that's something very much like a child would do, and not in a dickish way. It's not deliberate. It's just the way a kid is. They just think solely about themselves. So I think it's very genuine to his character, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So, I mean, on one hand, it's kind of annoying, but it's also like a good attention to detail.
So then Pee-wee goes to the park and he's riding around. This is North Hollywood Park. I know it very well. A lot of memories there. I used to live right down the block. Used to go get steps there. He sees the BMX kids. Then he sees the bike bullies. Two sets of biker gangs very close together.
Were they really biker bullies though?
Well, there's like the nice kids, but then like I think the second set of kids seem kind of like dicks.
Yeah, but they were so young. They just seemed like he fell, so they were just like, whatever, dude.
We really have to get through this faster, so.
Okay.
But yeah, when he falls in front of those kids, it really reminded me one time a family was having a barbecue and I crashed into their hedges. It was so awkward. They were like running to help. They were like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, I'm fine. I just like ran away with my bike and then like hopped on.
It's like people that get seriously injured where they hop up and they like walk it off, but then they collapse. Did he collapse later?
No, but that did remind me of one time I was, you remember that shopping center where the Bladesman is or was on Sunrise Highway?
Yeah, it definitely was. There's no way that's still there.
I mean, if that business survives the pandemic, then it's definitely a front for something. The sword store. But one time I was riding my bike and a lady was exiting the driveway and she came to a stop and waved me on. And then I continued to go. And then she went and ran me over. I mean, didn't run me over, but she hit me off my bike. And I was so like, oh, and she was completely like horrified. You know, she just hit a kid with her car. And I was like, she's like, "Are you okay? Oh my God. Let me get your name." And I was like, "No, I'm fine. And I didn't realize until after she drove away that my wheel was like completely bent. And I was like, oh gosh, lost my wheels.
You know, one other thing with Pee Wee's bike though, I'm sure you like the bike. I'm sure you would love to have that bike, but he has a vanity license plate. Remember that when that was a big thing on bikes?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I forgot about that. Wow.
Remember when Honeycombs, their big promotion was they gave out the vanity license plates?
Wow.
As a prize?
You're really taking me back. I forgot about that.
don't want to harp on it too much. Just wanted to throw it out there.
But actually, the weird thing is I don't love that bike because I never liked when bikes had things added on them. Like, do you remember how our mutual friend Eric, streamers, did not like that.
What about the clickety clacks and the spokes?
I did not like that either.
No, I hated that.
But our friend Eric had those bikes that like looked like a motorcycle, like had a bunch of like plastic on it that looked like a motorcycle, and I thought that was so lame. Even as a little kid, I was like, "That's lame."
Yeah, like nobody's gonna look at that and be like, "Look, that kid's got a motorcycle. He's cool."
The Magic Store, seeing this on the Santa Monica Promenade, a lot of memories there as well.
Does it look the same at all, or did they completely like redo it?
It looks pretty much the same.
That's awesome.
You know what's great? You know what's great is that the Las Vegas shooter, he scouted the Santa Monica Promenade as a possible target, and I'm just glad that he did not choose that because it would make this scene very tragic. Mm. We didn't think that was going to get mentioned in this. But ever had a wild time in a Magic Store?
Yes, I have a very clear memory of a Magic Store in Florida.
Magic-a-Lago.
There was this girl that was my cousin's friend, Bridget, and she, our families would all go to Florida because we had condos there, and she brought her friend that summer, or that spring, I should say, and I wound up hanging out with this girl. She was like 2 or 3 years older than me. Mm-hmm. And she was really cool. It was like, at first she had like that big sister quality to her, but then it turned more into a huge crush. Mm-hmm. And we decided, like, my cousins and my brother were all doing something. They maybe were surfing or something. So we decided to go to a magic shop. And we were looking at all the stuff playing and making each other laugh. But we wound up buying a few things, like the dirty soap, if you remember that trick, the stink bombs, and then the different trick gums, the one that like snapped on your fingers when you would pull a piece out.
Yeah.
And the one that would turn your mouth and your teeth black. And of course, we got so excited that we had all these pranks that we were just doing them once we got back to the beach area. So we never actually got to use them on family members. And the whole time I was just really into this girl, like such a big crush. And we wound up becoming pen pals. Like we remained in contact for like 2 years, like periodic. And I'm sure all the letters were stupid and stuff, but it's cool that, stayed in touch. And a couple years later, I wound up going to my cousin's house. They had like a barbecue over the summer in New Jersey.
They were cooking this girl. How could you do it?
That's where the story ends. I'm not going to tell you what happens now. But she was there, which I didn't know she was going to be there. And when I saw her, she kind of had like an Amy Mann look to her, except with more eyeliner. Very good looking, very stunning, I should say, which completely intimidated me because now at this time, I was probably around 13. Mm-hmm. So, so I kind of felt like Kevin Arnold, but I was just so overcome with emotions and internal dialogue, which I was trying to figure out what I should do. And by the time I figured it out, day turned to night and a lot of moments have passed and didn't really get much time to talk to her because I was being so awkward prior to that. And we did wind up talking a little bit and she was still very cool, but never really led to anything. And like many crushes just fade into obscurity.
Just like that story.
Wow. I'm sure you could relate though.
Barely, dude. If I see a chick, I'm scoring. Sorry, Ed got into the whippets again. We're not going to let him. I said do the podcast, Ed. I said do it sober. He had a whipped cream next to him. He's been hitting it the whole time. That's true.
Wait, Eddie, what's Eddie have to say? Is he down with you?
Oh my God, Eddie, no, why? You're a good guy with your normal. Come on, please,
man. What's going on?
So Pee-wee goes into the bike store. This was a huge scene for me, Rusty, because I finally know the origin of the Get Up Kid song, I Am a Loner, Dottie, a Rebel. Never knew why that song was called that. Yeah, they have a song with that title. I love Dottie. Man, what a crush. If I was a kid, I would have had a huge crush, and I still have a crush to this day. I bet you don't know her other roles, Rusty.
Of course I do. Well, she was in Valley Girl, which I don't know if you're familiar with. Did you ever see Valley Girl?
Nope, never seen it.
Oh, so you would like her in that. But of course, she is the voice of many characters, including Tommy Pickles and one of the Powerpuff Girls. I think it's Buttercup.
Angelica.
That's kind of good in a weird way.
That was supposed to be the red-haired kid, though. That's not Tommy Pickles, right? Tommy Pickles is the
Chucky.
baby. Yeah, Chucky.
Yeah, Chucky. Give me a little more Chucky.
Angelica. I don't know many lines because I was 40 when Rugrats came out.
She's also a singer, though. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that.
She had a couple big songs. One of them, which is a song that I used in one of our episodes called Mind Over Matter, which was featured in Summer School. Great movie.
Oh, I would love to check out that film.
And Say It, Say It. Not as big as a hit, though, but multi-talented. She seems like a really cool person. Like in the interviews I've seen with her, she seems like somebody that would be very fun to hang out with.
I love her energy in this film. Her energy in this film was great.
Do you know that it was rumored that she was dating Paul Rubens at the time?
Really?
Well, yeah. And she also briefly dated Brad Pitt. So who hasn't that guy dated? I feel like when you see like read that celebrity dated Brad Pitt, it's just like it kind of like takes your crush down a notch. It's like there's no chance. There's no chance ever.
It's her and Paul Rubens. I'd like to play that Ocarina of Time and watch them fuck, huh?
Supposedly, did he also date Cassandra Peterson, also known as Elvira, and she was in this movie as well.
I did not know that.
There's a lot of photos that you could look up online of them together. I think it was rumored that they dated as well.
But I love how he resists her. Like, it's just a funny energy where she's like, I want to know if you would go somewhere with me. And he's like, where? You know, and like his suspicious nature of this date is really funny.
Yeah. It's funny to see the roles reversed. Like, but it's funny because he's very rude to her when she's like just trying to get him to like go to the movies with her.
Mm-hmm.
And right after that, he exits the bike store and to discover his bike is stolen. So a little well-deserved there. And he collapses.
I love he comes in, he honks the horn and collapses.
Yeah. My bike.
Then here's another big coincidence. This guy, I went to the drive-in with a guy who is AKA Chuck. And now the bike store owner is named Chuck.
Yeah, he didn't seem like a Chuck.
Yeah.
It didn't even seem like a Charles. You know, I know cops have a very bad rap right now, but I did like the female cop that Pee Wee was filing the report with, the missing bike report. Didn't she have a very nurturing quality to her?
Yeah, I guess so. But
I was I was hoping to see her at the end of the movie with Amazing Larry at the drive-in.
So she's like, retrace your steps. Every time I've watched this movie, I'm like, retrace the steps. That's not going to do any good. But then he remembers that Francis expressed an interest in his bike.
Francis. Do you remember when parents, if you lost something, they would tell you to like retrace your steps? You would never find anything. Kids don't remember what they do with shit. It's not like you're going to remember.
He runs to the Francis mansion. He knocks on the door with such energy. And who answers the door, Rusty?
Mr. Fuji.
Well, it's not Mr. Fuji. That's what I thought it was. It's not Mr. Fuji.
I thought it was the guy that played Odd Job for a second. I was just like, is that Odd Job?
This is Tanaka. This is Tanaka.
Mr. Tanaka.
He was in Running Man. He's the hockey guy in Running Man.
That's right. That's right. Oh.
But he knew Mr. Fuji. I think they were like tag team partners. And
well, you've been telling people you know Mr. Fuji.
He said about Mr. Fuji, he was certainly a good performer, but you couldn't control him.
Really?
Francis is in the bathtub. That looks like a great bathtub, playing with those ships. I was like, can I somehow pull that off now?
Yeah, what would you do in that bathtub? It was like, I feel like I wouldn't clean myself in that bathtub. It looked more like a swimming pool.
I would love
to be chlorinated.
Play with those ships in there.
Like Godzilla? You'd be like the monster?
Yeah. No, just do what he was doing, you know. But I have pretty good bathtubs, but I like once it's ready to go, I'm like already over it.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, Francis was bathing in his tub in shorts. I assume you would be completely naked in yours.
No, I go full wetsuit.
Full wetsuit. Nice. We also see, because Pee Wee breaks out, we also are introduced to Mr. Buxton, played by Ed Herlihy.
Yeah.
Quite a famous guy, voice actor.
He was the craft spokesman for nearly 40 years, Rusty. His voice becoming as familiar as the next door neighbors. You know, from his obituary in the New York Times, he liked to recall a summer day in Times Square. He helped a blind man cross at 44th Street. He took the man's arm, and the man said it was a beautiful day. He said, "Yes, this is the kind of day the Lord made for the good guys." The blind man said, "I know you.
You're the cheese man on TV.
I go well up every time I hear that beautiful story. I watch a YouTube clip of him voicing over some craft products.
Mm-hmm.
And just the way he's talking about the most disgusting looking food, like putting like that garbagey Kraft cheese on like steak with pineapples and stuff. Ugh. I was getting so queasy watching it. And he's like, look at that delicious Jello ring with cranberries and mustard inside. Just disgusting.
Rusty, when I think I've told this story before, but when Pee-wee, after this, Pee-wee's putting up a $10,000 reward, and Dottie is like, Pee-wee, you'll never be able to pay that off. And he's like, hey, but whoever comes to collect it is the thief, which is a good scheme.
What character was that you were doing?
Look, I don't know.
People expect top-notch impressions from you, and that's what you're giving.
I know. Well, their voices are a little similar. It's hard to do for both of them. But this reminded me of one time, I don't know if I ever told this story. We did a commercial for, I won't say what company it is, but it's a very big union for seniors. And yeah. So they were doing like a nationwide campaign, and like we did the LA one, and it paid very well. And sometimes on things like this, you would give, it's almost like Sopranos, like you give like your friend, like, you know, so I was like the production designer for like a huge rate. And the only thing I had to do, because it's shot in a park, was put up a sign, much like Pee-wee did. And so the director, who is like the core crew, was like traveling, and we were just like the supporting people in LA. The director's like, where's the production designer? And I was like, oh, fuck me. All I had to do was put a sign on a tree. But man, I looked like Pee-wee trying to get the tape around this thing. It was like, you could imagine, it was like the messiest thing of all time. And the director finally was just like, oh my God, I'll do it. And it became clear in that moment that like we had filled all the roles with like friends.
Why do you always wind up in these positions?
Oh, it's the luck of the Irish, Rusty. Now let's take a bath together. Me, you, Ed, Bloody Mary, Baby Goldie, Pee-wee, Dottie.
Yeah.
This would be hot if it wasn't so crowded.
You don't need a bigger bathtub.
I don't know if it's coming or going.
That would be I would like to see how that scene plays out with all those people. Who's dying
first. My God! The leaking downstairs. Oh my God! It's overflowing.
That would be like Clue. Somebody's dying, and we have to figure out
who drowned the baby ghoulie. Oh wow, that'd be an incredible film.
Everybody's going to point to Bloody Mary because that's her thing, but the twist ending is it would be somebody completely random. Like,
but then right after that, this is huge. I wonder if you recognize this actor. We see that Francis. We see him sitting in the room with that big tiger or whatever that was. And we see that he's the guy who had the bike stolen. Did you see who played the thief?
Oh man, it was fucking Toad Boy again. We got more Toad Boy.
Toad Boy from Ghoulies. I can't believe I was like, this guy's really familiar. I can't place him. Then I looked up and I was like, oh my God, from our last episode.
He's very versatile because he played the most creepy character in Ghoulies, but then he's like kind of just like a thug, a hired like goon for this. And then he was like a macho dude in the movie Meatballs 2, his other big role, which I loved as a kid for some reason. I don't know if you remember Meatballs 2.
I was too busy watching Bergman.
There's no way you were watching Bergman at 8.
I meant Stan Bergman. He directed several episodes of Muppet Babies. He's an animation legend.
I don't know if that's true or not.
Oh my God. Ed, I wish I could watch Muppet Babies today, but the thing is, the licensing agreements, the Star Wars, Ed, all that footage they had from other films, it was a blessing at the time, but it's a curse now. You can't get it on streaming.
Oh, is that why?
That is why.
I never thought about it until now, but I'm acting like I'm intrigued.
I love the scene after where Pee-wee has the big meeting to like go over the evidence, and everyone eventually files out of the room. Mm-hmm. Just Pee-wee's energy here is so great.
Yeah, and it's like, we're like, what does that have to do with anything?
And even Dottie, she's the voice of reason. She's like, Pee-wee, like, let's go outside. Like, it's getting hot down here. And he's like, hot? I'm so comfortable. That's horrible. That was not good.
you know, last time I think it was for Ghoulies, I pointed out a continuity error, and said I was going to go on IMDb and upload it. I did not, but I found another continuity error in this scene.
I can't wait. What happened?
I don't know if it was reported, so I didn't look. But you know the shot when you see Speck on the floor, the cute little doggy that Pee Wee seems to abandon and never really mentions. But as Speck is sitting on the floor, right behind them, you see the footwear of Dottie because she's wearing very distinct pink Nike sneakers. And then in the next shot, you see Dottie coming down the stairs.
I'm gonna firebomb Tim Burton's house tonight at 4 a.m.
Do it, please. Avenge me.
Why, man?
Yeah, that's actually your Tim Burton was better than your Pee Wee.
I love the next scene. I fucking love when Pee Wee is like, so when he tells Dottie, he's like, I don't need you. I don't need anybody. And then he's like walking through the rain and he's like become like a creature and he's like hissing at everybody.
Yeah.
Including
like that,
one of the muggers played by Tim Burton himself.
Wait. Can I say something there before you get to that scene?
You're already saying it. Oh man, that's a horrible Pee Wee. That was my best Pee Wee. You're already.
I was trying to say before where he buys a pen and like the significance of buying the pen 1 hour early, and he's like, I don't know. But Pee Wee was interrupted when he was about to say that the moon is in the seventh house, which is very fitting for that scene, which he gets cut off. Because when the moon is in the seventh house is when you feel emotionally satisfied with your romantic partner or in your relationship. So he considers his bike his romantic partner.
Wow.
No, but yeah. So I was just like, oh, that's interesting. Moon in the seventh house.
Oh wait, this adds up because I'm checking. The last time the moon was in the seventh house was in 1974. I wasn't born yet, so that's why I've never felt that way. Come on.
All right, so Pee Wee did you know Tim Burton makes a cameo in that scene though?
Yeah, I just said it.
Oh, you did? I was too busy trying to find my note on the moon in the seventh house. Well, did you know that Tim Burton makes a cameo in that scene?
Then he goes to the fortune teller, and I love that she tries to take his jacket, but he hisses at her. He hisses at Madame Ruby. Ever been to a fortune teller?
No, I'm too much of a skeptic.
Yeah, I mean, of course.
Even as a kid, though. But did you ever go?
I always remember my mother went to a psychic, and it was a very accurate psychic. And the psychic said that my brother Jim did something with his legs, and at that time he was a cyclist. And she said my brother Michael would be working on a car and would get sprayed by chemicals and like become disfigured. Then she said that I would become the attorney general. Now, the troubling thing is that my brother is a district attorney, and I could see him becoming attorney general. So I'm going to get sprayed with the chemicals.
You're never getting close to working on a car. We all know that. You know, because the thing with like doing something with your legs, like that's pretty general, but the being sprayed with a chemical is very specific.
That's the thing. Like they teach you at fortune telling school, you have to throw one negative thing in to like make it sound credible.
You know, it'd be really crazy though. What? Imagine somebody listening to this podcast actually like gets that idea and goes sprays chemicals onto your brother. You like tracks him down.
As long as they rate and review.
You have to warn your brother now. You just put a hit on him. You know, I'm like I said a minute ago that I'm a skeptic with a lot of things. Is there anything that you believe?
Atlantis. I'm buying real estate there.
I remember you have those Time Life books with like the different things, the ESP ones and the
I used to be so into those books. I think I've mentioned this before too, but I used to like have like a book of like the unexplained. I mean, I had like a million books about that, but I used to be like, okay, there's like 500 entries in here. Odds are at least like, even if like only 50 of them are real, that's still amazing. But it's like statistics don't work that way. Like none of them are real.
Yeah. I think the only thing I believe is UFOs, but none that have visited Earth. Like there's definite extraterrestrial life out there.
No kidding. Looked in the mirror lately?
That hurts. Oh, you know, I couldn't think of anything.
I have a fact here about the Alamo. So I love that there's a huge plot point about him going to the Alamo, but it's just her. It's spurred on by this psychic looking at like a sign in kind of a Kaiser Soze way, and just
Yeah.
throwing it into the conversation. And having never seen this movie before, I was like, oh, that's how the Alamo comes up. I was like, that's funny. It's like he's doomed the whole time.
Yeah.
I used to be so obsessed with the Alamo, Rusty. I used to always dream about getting that Ocarina of Time, and going back with like modern weapons. And I would just show up as like a 12-year-old with like an M16 and be like, "This is for you, Davy Crockett."
Jim Bowie and Davy Crockett. We got Edward here now.
But it wasn't like they said. I read about it. It turns out that they got surprised in the morning by the siege. They tried to run and then like just got shot down. It wasn't like
so they're actually cowards.
Yep.
Gunned in the back.
Yep. It was not like in the Fess Parker film, which for some reason, as like a little kid, I became obsessed with like those old school Davy Crockett movies. And that ends with him just like swinging his rifle, and it kind of like fades out as he's like knocking Mexicans down.
Now, Davy Crockett was huge in like the 50s, maybe early 60s. Like all those kids had like the coonskin hat and stuff. You were trying to bring that back? You were
I
one of
was.
those little kids?
I had the coonskin hat, and I'd wear it around.
That hat was never cool.
I know. Cool. That's a huge day for me. I can still remember what it smelled like too. That's amazing.
Now those things became like butt plugs that you have the raccoon tail hanging out of your ass.
Hey, that might be your lifestyle, but not mine.
But famously, they say there isn't a basement in the Alamo, but there's actually 2 basements in the Alamo.
Oh my God, you fact checked this.
Yeah, and Pee-wee visited during an episode of Top Chef.
Really?
Yep.
Wow, that's actually I'm looking at your notes now. I should have read your notes. I would have seen that days ago. Very interesting.
So Pee-wee starts making his way to the Alamo, and he gets picked up. He hitchhikes. Hitchhiking used to be a big thing. I bet you've never picked up a hitchhiker before in your life, right?
No, I was out of fashion by the time we were driving.
I did once. I did once. And not that long ago. I did it in like 2006, maybe. Only because I went skiing alone in Colorado, and I found the drive up to the resort, the ski place. I found it fucking terrifying. And so I saw a guy hitchhiking, and he was clearly dressed like a worker from the place. And I was like, I'm going to pick him up now because I don't want to do this drive alone. But I picked this guy up, and he was such an asshole. He was like, "Did you go to college?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "College is fucking bullshit, man." And I was like, "Well, I already graduated." So he's like, "You fucking waste your money in college, dude." I'm like, "That's cool. Should we listen to the radio?"
Yeah. What happens if you guys don't like click? Like, can you kick him out of the car? I don't think you could.
No, definitely not. Because the whole thing was like these were scary mountain roads. He would have just tumbled down the cliff.
Did you feel threatened in any way that like your defenses were up?
No, I didn't feel threatened at all. I felt threatened by this guy's annoying conversation.
Yeah.
What did you think about Mickey?
He was probably my least favorite character as a child. Now he's just, I get it more, so it's just fine. What about you?
I liked him.
Yeah, I mean, it's very comical with what he's like on the lam for.
Oh yeah,
and when they're pulling up to the checkpoint, and Pee-wee like puts on the disguise, like that seems very, very humorous.
I'm not going to say who it is, but he looked a lot like a girl I know. When Pee-wee was in drag, I was like, that looks exactly like my friend's sister. Not going to say who.
I was thinking like Shelley Duvall as Olive Oil. Wasn't it based on Olive Oil though? I think that was like the look he was going for.
I thought it was based on his actual sister.
Oh, really?
But so Mickey, the reason why he's on the run is because he cut off a tag on a mattress. Now, this was a huge joke back in the 80s. One of those huge jokes we've talked about before. But do you know why they had the tags that said you could not remove this by law?
I would take a guess, but I'd probably be wrong. So just enlighten me.
The tags, first of all, they said, do not cut this off under penalty of law, except by consumer. So it was always like the manufacturer was one who couldn't cut it off. Because during the late 1800s and early 1900s, government officials
It's like I'm obviously reading, but how do I make it like a
My eyes are following. My eyes are following what you're reading.
They became concerned about the materials manufacturers were using to stuff these mattresses. Now, to cut costs, some manufacturers recycled old, used bedding materials and stuffed them into new mattresses. Thus, the new mattresses were full of bacteria and sometimes even contained vermin or bug-infested stuffing. Now, this reminded me of Lauren.
X?
Yeah. We used to go to like the Long Island carnivals, and I've always liked to go to carnival and try to win those games, you know? And she was obsessed with the concept that the stuffed animals from those games were filled with kerosene soaked rags. And I was just like, why would you like, I could see put rags in them, but why would you dip them in like fuel that actually costs money?
Yeah.
There was no reasoning with her.
Did you ever cut one open and like investigate?
I did. It was like Lion Witch in the Wardrobe. I fell into like a carny world. It was like a portal.
And what did you find there?
I had a whole series of adventures, very dirty adventures.
Dirty.
I ate a lot of Zeppeli. I came back. It was like no time had passed, but I had been away for like months. My parents were like, he's really obese. And I'm like, all they have is funnel cake.
Just a random thing.
I don't even know.
How many funnel cakes if you had to, how many funnel cakes could you eat?
I mean, I just had one at the drive-in, as I said, and I can't get through one.
Yeah. What do you think? Would you vomit?
It is amazing. It is amazing for like half the time.
Yeah, I feel like with Zeppelis, like the first two are amazing, and then it's all downhill from there.
Yeah.
It's a bad sign when you get them in that white paper bag, but it's like transparent by the time you get through like the first two.
Oh my God. And just reaching into that bag just feels so dirty. You're just like, oh boy, I'm a bad boy.
I'm going to rat Jen out here. She only found out like 2 years ago. She got Zeppelis and she didn't know the shake the bag trick.
Wow.
Should we get her? should we put mask on her and break her kneecaps for that?
She's like, I can't believe that's the reason you're doing this.
I don't even know what's going on.
Now, the cop that pulled him over, this was his final role.
That's terrible.
Very small career for this guy, but he also appeared in The Terminator and Silver Spoons. Now, Rusty, the roads get crazy as Pee-wee is driving, and it reminded me of
behind the wheel.
It reminded me of the time me and Dan's gonna love this. We were driving in Iceland, but I remember one time we were on this really icy road, and Dan was driving, and Dan is like, "What's to my right?" And I was just like, "A fucking cliff!" And it was so scary. And this road, which is like the big road going around the country, we kept driving it. It kept getting more and more snowy. And then it just reached a point where there was a sign that just said impassable. And the road just had a huge mountain of snow. And then like we just had to turn around.
Oh my God, it's scary.
But I wish we had that parachute that Pee-wee and Mickey have as the car is going down. Thanks to games like Fortnite and Warzone, I parachuted a million times in fake life, but probably never will in real life.
Yeah, that has no appeal to me. The parachute.
Probably more likely that I'll kill someone that I will parachute.
That you've killed someone or that you will kill someone?
It's more likely like the part of Warzone where you're like in a war and you're like throwing a grenade and you're like shooting a machine gun. That's probably more likely than the part where I'm parachuting onto an island. Pee-wee turns into a cartoon for a second. That was cool. And then
that's getting edited right out. Just get the large Marge. We need large Marge here.
Large Marge. Tables turn. Pee-wee gets picked up by Large Marge. This is like one of the most famous scenes. I love stories that are on a night like tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like one of those moments that's Dan recently told me that you guys were talking about unexpectedly scary moments in kids' films, like when the woman turned into a robot in Superman 3 or this Large Marge moment.
Two of the scariest things growing up for me.
Because even I watched like a lot of horror movies as a kid, but your defenses are up during a horror movie. In movies like this, when it's unexpectedly scary out of nowhere, like quite a shock.
They were going to cut that scene out. They were going to cut that out.
Really? I did not know that. I did not know that.
But I think who was it that wanted to keep it in? I think maybe it was Paul Rubens. I think Tim Burton wanted to cut it out,
Really? Wow.
and Paul Rubens wanted it to stay. I may be wrong on that, but I know somebody that definitely wanted it to cut it. Large Marge gave me nightmares. Like the first time I saw Pee-wee's Big Adventure was at my cousin's house, and we were sleeping over there. So I saw that scene, and then having to sleep in an unfamiliar place. Did not get much sleeping done that night.
Wow.
For years after that, not for years, but maybe like a few more viewings after seeing this movie, I would anticipate the scene coming up and close my eyes. It was just too much for me. Alice Nunn, who played Large Marge, she was in some other great movies like Thrashing, Who's That Girl at 3 O'Clock High, all classics.
Yeah, all that trash is on the Criterion channel right now.
That's it now. I'll subscribe. Now you got me interested.
Yeah, that's the sad thing.
Dude, I guarantee you ask anybody, they would pick those movies over the shit you would probably watch on the Criterion channel.
Get the fuck out of here.
I know for a fact that a lot of those Criterion movies you struggle to get through.
Yeah, right.
Do you know though that who did the claymation sequence for Large Marge?
I'm gonna guess Henry Selick.
Well, I don't know. I think he was involved, but it was also the Kyoto brothers, who you may remember from Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Big.
That's huge.
You could see some of that, right?
Yeah, I definitely
See some
can.
of their style. Yeah. People are just like, come on, get back to reminiscing about shit. We don't need these facts. Large Marge, though, is maybe one of the more iconic scenes from this movie. Everybody knows Large Marge. I think that became an insult back in the day. If you were dating somebody that wasn't very attractive, you were known to be dating a Large Marge.
Then, quite famously, we get to the dinosaurs. This is also featured in the film The Wizard, these dinosaurs. I've driven by them before. It's now a creationist museum. That's fun. He meets Simone. She wants to go to Paris. For some reason, Simone, not a fan favorite.
Do you know how it became a creationist museum? Where are they? The Cabazon dinosaurs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't. I think they just bought it.
Yeah. Nothing that exciting.
It was going out of business.
Yeah. Why were they designed though? Why did the sculptor design it? Was it for any specific reason? Was it just for a roadside attraction, or was it more?
It was just
for a different purpose?
It was like a gas station. It was just like lure people into the gas station. I'm trying to remember where this is, but I feel like it might be on the 10, which is like the old Route 66. And so, it was very competitive. There's a lot of roadside stops. So it was like, you got to have a sick one.
Look at you.
Now, here's a funny coincidence, Rusty. The dinosaurs in this game are featured in Fallout New Vegas.
Yes.
And Simone, the actress, did a voice for Skyrim.
Wow.
Conspiracy?
No.
Now, I want to talk about, they go to watch the sunrise. I want to talk about John Harris. This is the actor. This is the actor who played the jealous boyfriend.
Big presence. Big presence on screen.
Indeed, a big presence. This guy was a wrestler, Rusty. He was he made a short appearance in the AWA as Silo Sam. Now, he mainly wrestled in handicap matches due to his size. And whenever he was interviewed, he would just answer, yup, yup. He would only say yup. And
means he wasn't good on the mic, though, right?
Definitely not. In 1987, he wrestled for the WWF, now WWE, as Trapper John in a dark match. However, by 1990, he was out of the sport. Now, let me tell you something, though, for real.
Yeah. Tell me.
He was in a movie called Blood Circus. This movie, Blood Circus, was a lost film. It was a movie made, like a horror movie, made starring wrestlers from like the AWA, like independent wrestlers. It was thought lost for years and years and years. And you know what? I believe our friends at Vinegar Syndrome or a company like that found it and have restored it. And now it is back.
Yeah. A lot of those AWA wrestlers had the worst names. WWE really came in and like made it entertainment, like really like added some pizzazz to it. Like the AWA, it was just like Marvelous Ronnie Garvin and like Handsome Harold. It's just like the worst names.
Yeah,
they all had those weird bodies. They all had those weird 80s bodies that weren't really built. They were just like kind of like They always wore those. They always wore those trunks that were like looked like a big diaper. They would go up like way too high. Like they would go up to like mid chest, or not mid chest, but like mid waist.
That's my quarantine uniform. That's what I wear every day. And I have such little energy that I've set up ropes around the apartment. It's like when I need to go to the bathroom or something, I gotta bounce off the ropes, and then I go running into the bathroom.
One thing I want to say about Big John Harris, obviously known for his large stature, but Wikipedia mistakenly lists him several times as only 5'11". I love those mistakes. Do you know how tall he really was, though?
How tall was he?
7'8".
What?
Now, I know you're obsessed with freakishly tall people, especially in video games.
Yeah.
Do you remember growing up? Of course, you probably knew from the Guinness Book of World Records, Robert Wadlow, the tallest living man ever. I remember I was so fascinated by this guy, but I swore I told people, and I don't know why nobody challenged me, but I would say my uncle was just as tall as him, but my uncle was 9 foot. Now, Robert Wadlow was only like 8'11", and I would say my uncle was 9 feet tall, and people never challenged me. What a weird lie.
That is an amazing lie.
For like 2 years. I used to actually, and then I was friends, or actually mutual friend Eric would say that he knew somebody that was 10 feet tall. And I was just like, that makes sense. There's got to be somebody 10 feet tall.
My uncle was 20 feet tall. He was 20 feet tall, Rusty. I had a 20 feet tall uncle.
So then Pee Wee has his like big stop motion dream. And then the hobos sing their song. I don't really remember all this.
Not in the hobos.
You know, it reminded me of the Alf episode Night Train. I think that's our most listened to 30 minutes our last episode. So check that one out.
Check out all of them.
Well, yeah.
Short.
No, I love them all. So Pee Wee ends up at the Alamo. Jan Hooks running the tour. Now, I forgot that Jan Hooks died.
Yeah.
Very sad story. If you want to read a sad story, read the Grantland article about Jan Hooks, her final years. She was very reclusive and she was very lonely. But she
needs some Eddie D.
People reached out to her. They tried to connect with her, but she isolated herself. And she lived upstate in Bearsville, New York. And sometimes she would say to her neighbors, "I used to be a star." And she loved watching bad movies. The worse, the better. She would have loved Blood Circus.
She probably would have loved a lot of movies that we've reviewed so far.
Oh my God. She would love Doom Asylum. Remember that guy? You're on the hook, Jan. Literally. I can't remember his voice, but I did shred my throat just then.
Well, that's you're doing a good job then, because you were shredding your throat doing it the last time. She loved watching terrible movies. She loved, for instance, The Oscar featuring Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, I've never heard of this movie. I might check it out.
She drank untold gallons of Robert Mondavi Sauvignon Blanc.
She did. I think she had a drinking issue, and
Bobby Mo.
So she was just drinking alone in her final years. As
you're off the track, you went off the rails.
Death closed in, much like I feel death closing into me now.
I love the most amazing thing is people listening are probably like, "Wait, these guys actually prep? This is the product after prep."
So they go to the Alamo. I'm gonna blast through this.
You guys have been just about. I was just going to do some Jan Hooks impressions for you.
Go for it.
I just did.
Great, I loved it. Simone sees him. She's off to Paris. He calls Dottie. He gets chased by John. We see a parade of the Day of the Dead parade. Ever see the film Coco?
No.
I loved it. Pee Wee ends up at the rodeo, accidentally ending up at the rodeo. That was a big fear as a kid.
Really? Go on.
Oh, Rusty, that could happen quite a lot. Back in my drinking days, I can't even tell you how many times I wandered into the rodeo, had to get saved by the clown. Oh boy. A lot of friends helped me out back then.
Everybody loves Ray. You got to get him on. You got to get him to do a guest spot.
I gotta do something to my plumbing to get him to come over.
Imagine he comes over. He's like, "Ed, what's the problem?" And you're just like, "Well, hold on. We're just gonna record a segment here."
I'm pretty sure after like my 40th session with him, he's gonna be like, "Ed, I've got to confess, I don't know anything about plumbing. I'm not really a plumber."
He's just lonely.
And you're lonely too, aren't you?
That's what if Ray was a guest and you let him pick the episode? What kind of movie do you think he would pick?
Oh, and it's Michael Collins with Liam Neeson.
So he does the rodeo, and the cows end up chasing away Big John. Now the next scene, Rusty. You know, I've realized in my life one of my big kinks, is I love a scene where someone enters and like, a crowd of people are like really pissed off and they don't like the person, and then they win them over with dancing.
That's your big kink.
That's my big kink. I remember that show Stella. I feel like that's aged horribly, but there was one scene kind of similar to this where they went to a bar and all the guys hated them, but then they did a dance and like they won over the whole crowd.
So it's always through dance is where how you win a crowd over.
Or, you know, or you could do like a song. It's just like if it's like one person against like a hostile crowd, but they do something kind of ridiculous, and then the crowd incongruously is like, we love this guy. I mean, it's heartwarming when the bikers send Pee Wee away on the bike, but then he immediately goes into the sign and gets knocked out. That's great. He has a weird dream, Rusty. He wakes up in the hospital and he sees that the brother from the Wonder Years, check out our Wonder Years episode. He sees the brother from the Wonder Years has his bike.
Wait, you just skipped over the whole Pee Wee at the bar thing? That was it?
Well, what do you want to say about it?
Well,
Feel free to jump in.
To this day, I'm still shocked that the biker mama was Elvira Cassandra Peterson.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I've seen her without the Elvira makeup on, but she just doesn't look like that person. It's weird. Weird to me. You know, with the hospital scene, though, I think that's nowadays that's more scary than the Large Marge. Those clowns were very grotesque.
Yes, they were.
Just something about the clown makeup like that. Like the more, like, I guess, was it supposed to be intentionally scary or just very clownish?
Well, you know Tim Berkman, and it's always a heightened experience.
Tim Berkman? What did you say? You called him Tim Berkman.
It's getting late, all right? He doesn't care. I'm cool with it, man. I'm cool.
Yeah, so he has the dream where he sees Jason Hervey.
Who?
That's his name, the kid from the Wonder Years.
Oh, yeah.
You know who else is in that scene, though, with that? Well, actually, no, I don't think he's in that scene yet. I think he's in the scene with when Pee Wee shows up on set.
Who is that? I got to know now.
The woman that plays a Mother Superior. Oh, Mother Superior. It's Lynn Marie Stewart, who played Miss Yvonne from the Pee Wee Herman Show.
I did not know that. Don't know who that is.
You don't know who Miss Yvonne is? The most beautiful woman in Playland? Who are you?
We established I don't know Pee Wee very well at all.
This is how we find out you're one of the creatures from Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
I'm a poser, and I am happy to admit it.
There you go.
I love the collision of realities that occur here because at the end of the film, there's two big scenes. First, he goes to Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
Now, when he's getting through those gates, and Milton Berle is going in, and Milton Berle makes a joke about a duck, and he's like, "What do you think it was? A duck?" Or whatever he says. Was that a reference to his famously huge dick?
Yeah. How big was his dick? Do you know?
You know what? I'm going to go dig him up.
Well, his dick would surely be rotted by now, unless he was mummified. Even then, it'd still be shriveled. So you'll never know. You know, who else had a... I don't know what I'm saying. Oh, boy.
So on the set with the Wonder Years kid, he's like, you know, they're filming like a movie where he's supposed to be like a good kid, but in between takes, we see that he's like a huge dick. And it makes sense because his name is Rusty.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now the big chase. I don't know what you could really say about the big chase, except that it's an incredible scene.
It's absolutely incredible. It just keeps going, and it's an awesome ride.
You can imagine me a couple weeks ago seeing for the first time. I was like, wow, and more, and more, and then I was like, and then Twisted Sister, and then this, and then a fire.
You must have loved the Godzilla thing.
Oh, that was great.
Yeah, and like the Back to the Beach scenes, like with the Which is funny because later on, Pee Wee Herman appeared in Back to the Beach with Frank Avalon and Annette Funicello. So I think he always had an obsession with those movies.
That was another like very brief thing in our era as kids where those movies kind of came back. Like I remember I used to really like the sitcom Gidget. Remember that?
Oh yeah. Well, I like the girl in it.
Me too.
You know, it's sad. Did you ever watch any of those Back to the Beach movies? Because he used to play them. that was like a Saturday night feature on like WB or something. It's just like, oh, play the classic beach blanket bingo or whatever it was.
I wish I did, but I didn't.
You know what's really sad though? Like it was like one of Buster Keaton's last roles where he plays like the witch doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing like old, rundown Buster Keaton.
Well, I'll dig him up as well.
No, leave Buster Keaton alone. Damn it,
man. So then the fire at the pet store scene, that was very it's a lot of suspense because of his fear of snakes. He doesn't want to get the snakes out. Yeah. And every time he went in, I was just like, the fire is burning too much, Pee-wee. Get the snakes. Because I didn't know that he was actually going to save him.
Were you amazed that he got a chimp to help him out and that they were actually had a chimp in a pet store?
I was. And did you know that Tim Berkman has a phobia of chimps?
Why do you keep calling him Tim Berkman?
The hour is late.
I don't know if this is
he has a phobia of chimps.
Yeah, because you know what they'll do? They'll bite your face off.
Yeah, no, I think it's a valid phobia.
Yeah, I'm way more afraid of chimps than I am of snakes.
Oh, yeah, me too.
I'm not going to like Burma getting fucking eaten by a snake. But a chimp is very real. That's plausible for me.
That's plausible for you? Okay.
Well,
back at the studio, they're watching the footage, and you think it's going to be Pee-wee in trouble, but Mr. Hawthorne says this story will make a great movie. I saw this for the first time. I had no idea. I was like, oh, they're going to make a movie out of this now?
Yeah.
Dottie comes in with the bike, and then the final scene at the drive-in. What a fun scene, huh? I had no idea this was coming.
Oh, really? Didn't see it coming at all, huh? That he had the happy ending. He got his bike.
Well, I knew there'd be a happy ending, but I didn't know that they were going to have like this, fake movie of the movie I just saw.
Yeah, that was
usually
cool.
it's a pretty corny thing where it's like, the story you're watching is actually the story that gets made in the film. But this was like the best version of it.
Yeah.
Did you like those drive-in ads? Oh, I love it. James Brolin and Morgan Fairchild.
What was Morgan Fairchild really famous for? Like, this is like, I only know her from like Short Circuit, where Johnny Five's like, "Ooh, Morgan Fairchild," and then like this. What else did she do? Was she in like a soap?
Yeah, that's like another product of our, I don't want to say relative youth compared to this, where she was famous like when we were kids, but we didn't know why she was famous. The drive-in ads, I recently on Amazon, it was like a suggested thing on Prime. It was like drive-in ads. So I just had it in the background for like an hour. And there was a lot of ads about don't steal the speakers. I guess stealing speakers used to be a real issue before they transferred it to like radio thing.
Never would have thought of that.
Just like in the silent film era, hats were like the cell phones of the day. Because ladies would wear such huge hats. They'd block out the view. There's even I bet that was a problem too. There's even a film called Those Awful Hats about this very topic. Wowie zowie. Ninjas, love to see the ninjas in the film. Ninjas were huge back then. Yeah. But really, the only two things I want to say about the movie, I love when Pee-wee appears, and I just love how stiff of an actor he is. Like that got such a hearty lol out of me. Yeah. And I love when James Brolin says at the end, he's like, "I know you are. But what am I?"
Was Pee-wee voice dubbed in the movie?
Yes.
Within the movie? So why would they use that voice though? Because I thought he was just so stiff that was like him doing a completely different voice, trying to like act.
No, the idea was like he was so bad that they had to dub his voice someone else. But my one other kink I want to mention, Rusty, is I love when people inappropriately, like when they laugh too hard at something that shouldn't be funny. And like, so I love like the hobos laughing so hard. But I tell you, I don't love snow cones. Never as good as you want them to be.
Yeah. I always wind up getting a snow cone, but never in love with it. I don't know what. I think I want to be because I like the flavored sugar or whatever it is, the sugar water.
Remember that Charlie Brown, the Peanuts snow cone maker? I might buy one of those and then sell them in my building. That'll be my pandemic business.
You know how long it takes to shave that ice to make a Snoopy snow cone? It takes like an hour to make like that little tiny like medicine cup.
Oh, that's what I'm going to charge $80 a shot.
There you go. It's a lot of work though. You got to turn that crank really hard to shave that ice cube.
I could open my door, put like a table there. I could put like plexiglass up for safety. The HOA board would be like, "This is not allowed."
Out of all the characters in this movie, the hobos are the ones that bother me the most. I don't know, something about them I just don't love. But like, remember where they really got a good chuckle out of saying they had box seats?
Oh yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing I like.
That's the kind of thing you expect from the hobos that are at the drive-in. And then Mickey's into it from the prison bus, which is give him a night out. Oh, real good, Pee-wee.
And I like Pee-wee's such a rebel. I like that he is immediately trying to get Mickey free. Like I like that Pee-wee is like an agent of chaos. I like that.
He's a successful movie star now. So I mean,
yeah,
with the type of behavior you would expect. I have 2 questions though for you.
Go on.
I'll start with the easier one first. Pee-wee is such a big movie star. Did he just possibly kill Francis in front of everyone? Because we see him get launched off the bike when he tries to sit on it. He gets launched pretty high in the air. There's no way he's landing at his frame size and not seriously injuring or killing himself.
Yeah, he doesn't land actually until Big Top Pee-wee, and he lands in a lion cage and gets eaten. That's how high they shot him.
Did you like Big Top Pee-wee?
I have no memory of it.
No. Your words are starting to sound weird to me. Is it because I'm tired? Or did you say
I kind of want to watch it, but I know it's not going to be good.
The Piccolo brothers, or whatever they're called. My other question for you:
Penelope Ann Miller's in it, right? That was there was a period of 5 years where it was the law that she had to be in every film.
Yeah. Never liked her though. Never was a big Penelope Ann Miller fan.
Yeah, I liked her.
Did you? She seems like your type.
Yeah.
I like the other one, the Italian star that was in Big Top Pee-wee. She was also in Hot Shots. I can't think of her name.
Valerie Garina, like
Valerie Bernelli. Well, let me ask you my other question before we wrap this up.
Yep.
Now Dottie finally gets her wish of going on a date with Pee-wee. They're there on their bikes. They did Pee-wee's got his bike. She's got hers. Speck is in the basket with his love interest. But do you think Pee-wee and Dottie went home and did it that night?
I hope so.
I bet you loved when Dottie giggled, like when she was on the phone with Pee-wee talking about like souping up the bike, and she giggles.
I've got it playing on a loop in my apartment. My neighbors have called the cops 3 times. I'm not changing it.
I mean, I don't know if like people understand just how big Pee-wee Herman was, but Pee-wee was huge back in the day. Like it was just parodied everywhere. They had a lot of products. You know?
It took me a long time
to understand,
but I finally I've arrived in Pee-wee fandom. I might actually watch that modern movie that they made a few years ago.
Oh, that movie is fucking shit. I've never been so outraged watching a movie.
Really? All right.
There's not one funny thing. Like, I don't know who wrote that movie. Obviously, they couldn't get Phil Hartman to help because I like Paul Rubens too, but that movie is just atrocious. Jeez, I'm so angry. We're ending this on such a sour note. I'm punching walls now. I'm punching my Pee-wee Herman doll.
Well, I look forward to watching it.